Meet Qiao An, once the pride of the Combat Armor Academy's honors class, now the star of its logistics division. Why? Because he failed the mech compatibility test so spectacularly that even the cafeteria robots cringed. In a world teetering 300 years after the apocalypse, Qiao An isn't just fighting for survival, he's drowning in debt and dodging eviction notices. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. Turns out our debt-ridden hero has already bonded with not one, but multiple top-tier combat armors, the kind that can crush entire cities. His response? Black or white? I'll take both. Let's make this quick. I've got bills to pay. Qiao An's game plan? Definitely not saving the world, unless the paycheck's right. Monsters, mutants, and mayhem stand no chance against a guy armed with the strongest battle armors. Get ready for a wild ride where the apocalypse has never been more profitable. The sun hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows over the crumbled outskirts of the post-apocalyptic city. His convoy rumbled forward, a fragile lifeline in a desolate world. Flanking them were two armed pickups, their mounted heavy machine guns scanning the barren landscape for threats. The 5-member tactical squad escorting the convoy exuded a taut readiness, their sharp eyes flickering with unspoken dread. Each bump in the road, each whisper of the wind seemed to promise peril. Refugees huddled together inside the transport vehicle, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Suddenly, the piercing wail of the beast detection radar shattered the fragile calm. The driver of the lead vehicle gripped the radio, his voice tight with urgency. "Captain, high-speed unidentified object detected. Dead ahead, I can't see anything." The captain, a grizzled veteran with the weight of countless battles in his eyes, didn't falter. "Combat positions, weapons live," he barked, his voice a blend of steel and urgency. Then it came, a tremor that felt like the earth itself had awoken in rage. The ground convulsed violently, throwing the convoy into chaos. A moment later, the source revealed itself with a terrifying roar. A sandworm, its monstrous body erupting from beneath the earth, towering like a nightmare given form. The force of the upheaval sent the transport vehicle rocking violently. Inside, passengers screamed, their terror amplified by the sickening realization that some of their own had been thrown from their seats, tumbling into the chaos outside. "Open fire!" the captain roared. The heavy machine gun on the lead vehicle erupted in fury, spewing fire and lead at the behemoth. Sparks flew as bullets struck the beast's armored hide, stunning it momentarily but failing to halt its assault. Inside the transport, Qiao An's world was a storm of noise and confusion. Amidst the chaos, he spotted a little girl, no older than 6, cowering on the floor, her tiny body trembling as sobs racked her frame. He lunged forward, shielding her with his arms, his voice low and steady as he whispered, "It's going to be okay. I've got you." But even as he spoke, a voice inside him began and whispered something else, something unsettling. "Why does this feel so familiar?" The driver's panicked shout snapped Qiao An back to the present. "Buckle up, everyone! The road ahead's about to get worse!" Outside, the battle raged on. The captain leapt from the lead vehicle, a specially designed spear in his hands. His voice thundered over the din, commanding the second vehicle's crew to escort the transport out of the combat zone. "Go! We'll hold it here." The battlefield was chaos incarnate. The sandworm, battered and bloodied, let loose a bone-chilling roar that reverberated through the air, rattling the very souls of those who faced it. Its massive, tooth-filled maw yawned wide as it lunged forward with the unstoppable force of a living mountain, radiating an aura of pure terror. The captain, sensing the critical moment, acted without hesitation. With a fierce cry, he launched himself at the monstrous beast, his specially designed spear gleaming coldly in the dim light. Each strike he delivered was a symphony of precision and power, targeting the sandworm's vital points with relentless fury. His blows landed with devastating accuracy, leaving the beast no room to recover. The captain's assault was perfectly timed with the unrelenting barrage of bullets from the first vehicle's heavy machine gun. Together they formed a seamless dance of destruction. The once mighty sandworm, its arrogance shattered, was reduced to a battered and bleeding state. Blood sprayed into the air, a grim rain that painted the battlefield in crimson as fragments of its once impenetrable exoskeleton cracked and fell away. But just as the tactical team dared to believe victory was within reach, the sandworm retaliated with a ferocity born of desperation. With a mighty surge of its immense body, it flipped the first vehicle as if it weighed nothing. The metallic groan of twisting steel echoed like a death knell. The gunner's screams were swallowed by the roar of destruction as the vehicle tumbled, its machine gun falling silent. The captain, undeterred by the chaos, made a split-second decision. With a battle cry that cut through the din, he charged at the beast once more. His spear became an extension of his will, each thrust and strike fueled by sheer determination. The ground shook with every collision, the captain's armor absorbing blows that would have shattered lesser men. Finally, with a roar of his own, he saw his opening. Driving his spear with all his might, he pierced the beast's cracked shell, plunging deep into its core. The sandworm writhed in agony, its deafening cries echoing across the barren landscape. The devastating blow sent the beast into a violent frenzy, its final act of defiance flinging the captain through the air like a rag doll. He hit the ground hard, the impact leaving him dazed and breathless. The battlefield grew eerily still. The sandworm, its strength drained and its body riddled with wounds, retreated underground with a thunderous rumble. The team barely had time to breathe, their relief palpable as the monstrous presence faded. The gunner, bruised but alive, broke the silence, laughing shakily. "Captain, that was unreal. You took down a monster." The captain smirked, pride gleaming in his eyes, despite the dirt and blood streaking his face. "This Vanguard battle armor," he began, his voice carrying a trace of cockiness, "makes all the difference. A standard suit couldn't—" He froze mid-sentence. His confident expression darkened as a deep unease clawed at him. His instincts, honed by years of combat, screamed that the battle wasn't over. Quickly, he activated his helmet communicator, his voice sharp and urgent. "Convoy status, report." The reply sent ice through his veins. The sandworm, far more cunning than anyone had anticipated, had circled back. It moved with eerie silence and terrifying speed, its massive body carving a path underground toward the convoy. Worse, this time it wasn't targeting the escorts. It had locked its sights on the refugee transport, the most vulnerable among them. "No," the captain whispered, his voice laced with dread. The tactical team watched in stunned horror as the sandworm burst from the earth once more, its colossal form looming over the transport vehicle. For a brief, paralyzing moment, fear rooted them to the ground. The helpless passengers inside the transport screamed, their terror echoing across the battlefield. The battlefield was pure chaos, the kind of scene that would make even the most seasoned soldier wonder why they didn't pursue a career in accounting. Refugees screamed, metal groaned, and amidst it all, the transport vehicle soared through the air like a doomed whale, shedding passengers like confetti at a very ill-timed parade. One of those passengers was Qiao An, tumbling out of the back gate with the kind of detached calm usually reserved for waiting in line at the DMV. His expression could be summed up as, "Really? Again?" As he spiraled through the air, he clarified to no one in particular, "Let's get one thing straight. I'm not a refugee. I'm a student at the Celestial Pivot City Battle Academy. Thank you very much." This is so beneath me. But beneath him was the ground, approaching fast, and amidst all the chaos, one familiar image replayed in his mind. The little girl, wide-eyed and innocent, standing on the precipice of tragedy. He had seen her perish countless times in this maddening, looping nightmare. He'd given up once, twice, maybe even 20 times. But this time was different. Enough. Qiao An muttered, the weight of resignation giving way to steely determination. I can't keep watching this happen helpless. His hand slapped his chest, emotion so dramatic it felt like it deserved theme music. If only I had a suit of combat armor. Cue the light show. A brilliant blue glow erupted from his chest, bathing the battlefield in an otherworldly radiance. Come, initiating covenant, he shouted, because apparently hero catchphrases were mandatory. In a transformation sequence straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon, armor began enveloping him. Left shoulder, left leg, right leg. With each piece, he looked less like a hapless student and more like a high-tech warrior cosplaying as a demigod. And just in time, the sandworm, poised to obliterate the transport vehicle, froze as a blinding white light erupted from Qiao An. The worm's massive, menacing body disintegrated in an instant, torn apart like a poorly made piñata. The battlefield stilled, time itself seemingly holding its breath in reverence of the moment. Qiao An descended slowly, striking the kind of superhero landing that would make any movie director weep tears of joy. He wasn't just wearing battle armor, he was piloting the White Tiger, a sleek, advanced Gundam-esque suit that radiated authority and menace in equal measure. The White Tiger suit shimmered in the aftermath, its pilot exuding an aura of calm power. Reaching out with precision and care, he plucked the little girl from midair, cradling her like a glass figurine. "Gotcha," he murmured. Then, with his other hand, he casually set the several-ton transport vehicle on the ground as though it were an oversized shoebox. Refugees and tactical squad members alike stared, slack-jawed, at the sheer absurdity of it all. The little girl's mother, crying tears of both relief and joy, bolted out of the vehicle to clutch her child, holding on as if letting go would summon the sandworm's ghost. Around them, cheers and praise erupted. Qiao An's dramatic heroics had turned him into a legend in under 5 minutes. But as he soaked in the moment, 2 tactical squad members didn't seem as impressed. Guns trained on him, they demanded his identity. Qiao An turned to them, a smirk forming. "Relax, I'm your friendly neighborhood." And then he saw it. A dog, standing casually amid the wreckage, its tail wagging like it was just another Tuesday. This wouldn't have been that strange, except for the part where it started talking. "Nice moves," the dog said, its tone so relaxed it might as well have been critiquing a cooking show. Qiao An blinked, once, twice. Thanks?" Before he could question reality further, the dog began to change. Its body warped and twisted, growing grotesque until it resembled a humanoid figure with the head of a dog. Qiao An stumbled back, instinctively raising his hands in defense. "What the hell are you?" Before the creature could answer, a sound cut through the surreal moment, a sound more dreadful than any battle alarm. Beep, beep, beep. The familiar screech of his alarm clock yanked him from the battlefield and back into his dingy apartment. He sat up, drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling. Qiao An woke with a deep, weary sigh, his breath hanging heavy in the dim room. This wasn't the first time he'd woken from that dream. The haunting familiarity clung to him like a second skin, leaving his chest tight with unease. Night after night, the same pristine white battle armor coat filled his dreams, its sleek curves, intricate details, and glowing energy etched into his mind with unsettling clarity. Yet each time he tried to recall its name, a searing pain would pierce his skull, as if his mind itself rebelled against the effort. He gave up, as he always did, and dressed for another day, his work clothes a far cry from the gleaming armor that haunted his nights. The morning news droned on from the TV, catching his ear with grim updates. The Joe Metal virus, humanity's century-spanning enigma, the anchor announced, discovered by the infamous Dr. Belisarius Joe. The virus was a relentless specter, warping nature into monstrosities over the past 3 centuries. The grimness deepened as breaking news flashed on screen. A convoy traveling from the Mingay outpost to Celestial Pivot City had been annihilated. Qiao An froze. The entire escort team, equipped with cutting-edge Vanguard battle armors, wiped out? The report claimed the mutated creature responsible was likely a level 3 or higher. His gut twisted at the thought. A squad with top-tier armor destroyed. What chance did ordinary people like him stand? Bad luck doesn't even begin to cover it, he muttered, his mind spiraling with both dread and a strange longing. Despite the dangers, Qiao An yearned for his own battle armor. Without one, he had no way out, no chance to pay off his family's suffocating debt or escape his bleak existence. That night, after another grueling shift at his part-time job, his exhaustion weighed heavier than usual. The measly 10,000 credits he earned felt like a slap in the face, nowhere near the promised amount. The bitterness gnawed at him as he thought of his sister, shoulders bent under the crushing burden they both shared. As he walked home under the dim glow of streetlights, a gleaming display in a roadside shop window caught his eye. A lineup of E3 exoskeleton suits. The polished metal seemed to glow in the night, exuding both power and reliability. Qiao An paused, captivated. Once military-grade technology, these suits were now relics of a bygone era, reimagined for civilian use. He leaned closer, taking in the sleek design of the E3 model, the pinnacle of its kind. Though it paled in comparison to modern battle armors, it was still a marvel of engineering. For someone like him, owning one of these would be life-changing. Imagine, he thought wistfully, taking on guild tasks or hunting mutants in the ruins outside the city. It'd be a game-changer. But his reverie shattered when his eyes fell on the price tag, a cool 1 million credits. Xiaoan let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course, why not just ask for a kidney while you're at it? The absurdity of the situation stung. Even as his family's debt towered over him, a single exoskeleton's price felt insurmountable. Yet he couldn't deny that it was reasonable by the cruel logic of the world. The government's tight control over battle armor ensured prices stayed prohibitively high, pushing people toward enlistment or military academies if they ever wanted access to such technology. And for those who dared to dream of owning one illegally, the consequences were unthinkable, prison or worse. Xiaoan stumbled into his small, cluttered room, exhaustion clinging to him like a heavy shroud. He powered on the screen, its cool glow illuminating his weary face as he scrolled to the page displaying the FA2 Vanguard battle armor. Developed by Tianshu Technology, it was a marvel, sleek, efficient, and accessible. Its fully automated dressing system was revolutionary, eliminating the need for mechanical assistance and making it incredibly user-friendly. At 300,000 credits, the civilian version's price was practically a steal. Finally, he thought, a spark of excitement breaking through his fatigue. For a fleeting moment, hope filled his chest, the idea of owning a battle armor feeling tantalizingly close. But the hope soured as reality set in. If the upcoming placement test at the Battle Armor Academy funneled him into the logistics division, all his dreams would crumble. Logistics cadets were ineligible to purchase battle armor. The prospect of being so close yet so far from his goal gnawed at him, the weight of his fears threatening to drown him. His spiraling thoughts were interrupted by a loud bang as the door flew open. Qiao Na, his older sister, strode in without so much as a knock. His initial panic at her unannounced entry turned into irritation. At least I'm dressed this time, he thought, remembering the last incident when he barged into her room uninvited and got a flying kick for his trouble. "Ever heard of knocking?" he grumbled, his tone laced with annoyance. She glared at him, her commanding presence filling the room. "What's your problem? Feeling bold enough to call me by my full name now?" He held his tongue, biting back a sarcastic remark about her hypocrisy. As the captain of the Azure Dragon Battle Armor Squad, Qiao Na had earned her no-nonsense reputation with her stellar combat achievements. Even so, he couldn't resist muttering under his breath, "No wonder your love life's a disaster." Her sharp ears caught it instantly. Without missing a beat, she picked up a nearby iron box and hurled it at him. "Coming from a lifelong single guy like you, give me a break." Beneath their constant teasing was a bond forged by shared struggles and a fierce loyalty to their family. "Sell this by the end of the week," she ordered. "Use the money to pay off this month's family debt first. Whatever's left you can keep. Just don't waste it on anything stupid." Her tone softened as she added, "Don't forget, Qiao An. If we miss a payment, the bank will take the house. This place, it's all we have left of Mom and Dad. We can't lose it." Her words hit him harder than the iron box ever could. The house wasn't just a structure, it was the last tangible piece of their parents, their childhood, their family. Placing a firm hand on his shoulder, she looked him square in the eye. "I believe in you, little brother. You'll keep this family together." Warmth spread through him at her words, though he couldn't help but grin and quip, "Your flattery's getting good, sis. Maybe it'll help you snag a boyfriend." Qiao Na chuckled, ruffling his hair in mock affection. "You're impossible." But as she moved toward the door, her tone turned serious once more. "Passing the Battle Armor Academy test is just the beginning. The road ahead won't get easier. You need to push yourself, Xiaoan, for all of us." He nodded, watching her leave, her silhouette disappearing into the hallway. Left alone with the glowing crystal in his hand, his emotions churned. He stared at it, the light reflecting the weight of their shared burdens. In the stark, fluorescent-lit classroom of the Battle Armor Academy, tension simmered like an undercurrent as a female student sat quietly, hands clasped, murmuring a silent prayer. Her lips barely moved, but her thoughts were loud, brimming with hope that her placement test results would show even a glimmer of brilliance comparable to the legendary Xiao Na. Across from her, a male classmate rolled his eyes and snorted. "Keep dreaming," he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and condescension. "Xiao Na is a one-in-a-million talent. She's the kind of genius this academy sees once in a lifetime. Thinking you can measure up to her is like hoping to outrun a battle armor on foot." The girl frowned but refused to rise to the bait. Instead, her curiosity got the better of her. If Qiao Na's talent is so incredible, why did she turn down a cushy spot at the military academy? Why stay here in Celestial Pivot City? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment her classmate faltered, caught off guard. Then he ventured an answer, his tone softer now, probably to look after her little brother. "I heard she gave up that opportunity right after he came back to the academy, and now Qiao An's ranked right behind her on the genius leaderboard. Makes sense she'd invest so much in his future." The girl couldn't help but chuckle at his sudden earnestness. "You actually believe in those so-called genius rankings? You know students make them up, right?" Still, her laughter faded as she leaned closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Speaking of geniuses, have you heard about the rumor? The one about the civilian prodigy. Apparently, he's ranked third in his grade. But because he's from a humble background, Everyone's dying to see if he'll actually get a contract battle armor. Her male counterpart waved her off dismissively. Talent is talent, he said, shrugging. It's a gift from the heavens. It doesn't care about your lineage. If he's good enough, he'll get his shot. She raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Really? What about the resources? Descendants of battle armor families have access to things no civilian could dream of. Look at Yao Lelin and Yu Sheng. They're practically swimming in advanced, he shot back. And what about Qiao Na? She's proof you don't need a silver spoon to succeed. Everything she's achieved, she's earned. The girl's eyes narrowed. Are you sure? The surname Qiao is rare, and there used to be a Qiao family among the central three houses. Maybe she's a distant relative of theirs, a lesser branch, maybe. Before their debate could escalate further, the door creaked open and Yu Sheng strode in. His presence was like a sudden frost, silencing them instantly. The infamous top student of the academy, Yu Sheng was as intimidating as he was brilliant. The two froze, nervous laughter bubbling up as they hastily shifted the topic back to Qiao An. The girl, still uneasy, expressed her concern. He took a year off. What if that affects his test performance? A drop in rank could ruin his chances. Their voices, loud in their attempt to deflect attention, carried further than they realized. Even with his headphones on, Yu Sheng overheard every word. The girl swallowed hard but refused to cower. Instead, she boldly stated, I admire Qiao An. If he passes the test and joins the contract preparatory ranks, his future will be incredibly bright. He might even get an advanced contract battle armor from the academy. Imagine that. He'd be the ideal partner. That was the final straw. Yu Sheng let out a cold, mocking laugh that sent shivers down their spines. His eyes glittered with disdain as he sneered, Qiao An. His future, don't make me laugh. The venom in his voice was palpable as he continued. The Qiao family fell from grace ages ago. When they were exiled from the capital, they were already clinging to scraps. And Xiao An, a penniless nobody drowning in debt, barely scraping by. He's not some genius, he's a joke. Do you really think someone like him has a future in battle armors? The girl's face burned with anger. She pulled up Qiao An's test data on her tablet, shoving it toward Yu Sheng. Look at this. His potential is undeniable, even with all his struggles. He's ranked third for a reason. Yu Sheng barely glanced at the screen, his sneer deepening. Potential? Don't kid yourself. Potential means nothing when your life is already in shambles. And Qiao An's life? It's a disaster, plain and simple. The tension in the classroom was palpable as Yu Sheng's scornful tirade against Qiao An reached its peak. Just as his words seemed to hang in the air, a calm yet razor-sharp voice sliced through the room. I smell an overwhelming amount of jealousy, said Yao Lelin, her tone measured but unmistakably piercing. All heads turned toward the doorway, where she stood with a quiet authority that rivaled any battle armor's presence. Yao Lelin, one of the Academy's brightest stars, exuded confidence in every word and motion. Yu Sheng's expression darkened instantly, his jaw tightening. The already tense atmosphere grew heavier, and he hastily slipped his headphones back on, as though trying to block out the entire world. Yet, even as he fumbled with them, he couldn't resist one last question. Why, Lelin? We've been friends since we were kids. Why do you always defend Qiao An? Yao Lelin didn't hesitate. Her faint smile was disarmingly serene, but her words carried the weight of a declaration. Because Qiao An is the man I've chosen, she said with quiet conviction. If he asked, I'd give him anything. A battle armor? That's nothing. If he wanted the entire celestial pivot city, the Yao family's corporation could make it happen. Her words struck like a thunderclap, silencing the murmurs that had been building among the other students. Yu Sheng's face twisted with a mix of disbelief and anger, but he said nothing. The truth in Yao Lelin's tone left no room for argument. Outside the academy walls, the slogan of the Celestial Pivot City Defense Force echoed endlessly. Put on your armor. Defend your homeland. This creed wasn't just a motto, it was etched into the very bones of Tianshu City, into the hearts of its people. The towering fortress walls that surrounded them bore silent witness to centuries of struggle, each stone soaked with the blood of countless warriors who had fought to protect the last sanctuary of humanity. In recruitment, videos broadcast on every screen, a voice full of hope and resolve proclaimed, "Look at this city. Isn't it perfect? Our descendants will surely have a bright future." The message was accompanied by sweeping views of the city, its gleaming spires defiant against the desolate wastelands beyond. Yet, beneath the surface of peace, darkness lingered. The wasteland outside remained merciless and cruel, a constant reminder of humanity's fragile grip on survival. Tragedies were an ever-present threat, and no one could escape the looming shadow of danger. That same evening, Qiao An found himself on a crowded city bus. Around him, passengers were deep in conversation, their voices blending into a cacophony of hopes, fears, and plans. One voice stood out, a man boasting loudly to his friend about a security company offering outrageously high pay. 10 times the market average, he declared, his enthusiasm infectious. But Qiao An could only sigh silently. He knew better. Such promises were bait, luring the desperate into life-threatening jobs with shady firms. The high pay was only achievable after surviving a brutal probation period. Most never made it past that stage, their fates sealed in the jaws of mutated beasts. Still, the mention of treasure hunting stirred a fleeting dream. If someone were to stumble upon a lost battle armor drawer in the ruins, it would be like winning the lottery, a chance to rewrite their life. But Qiao An knew better than to place his hopes on miracles. He resolved to wait for the results of the placement test before deciding his next steps. Yet, the memory of what had happened during the test still troubled him deeply. The test had been strange, even by the Academy's rigorous standards. Among the usual physical and mental evaluations, there was an odd, unexplained procedure. Without warning, the Academy staff had drawn an entire vial of Qiao An's blood. The day of the placement results arrived with an air of tension and anticipation that hung thick over the Battle Armor Academy. For many students, this was the moment that would determine their futures, their roles, their careers, and even their glory. The grand announcement hall was alive with murmurs of excitement, dread, and speculation. But for Qiao An, the moment was a bitter blow. Standing alone in the corner, he stared at the results displayed on his tablet. Logistics Division. The words felt like a death sentence to his dreams. He had performed spectacularly in every subject, first place, across the board. Yet none of it had mattered. The weight of disappointment pressed down on him, leaving him numb. Before he could fully process the news, a burst of energy jolted him out of his despair. "Qiao An!" Yao Leilin's voice rang out, bright and full of enthusiasm. She sprinted toward him, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I heard you absolutely crushed the exams, first place in everything." "I'm so proud of you." Her sheer exuberance was overwhelming, and Qiao An instinctively stepped back, trying to dodge her bounding energy. But Yao Leilin was relentless. She grabbed his arm, grinning mischievously. "I'm already imagining you as my future husband and a member of the Yao family," she declared boldly, her tone leaving no doubt she meant every word. Qiao An could only stare at her in stunned disbelief. "She's probably already picked out names for our kids," he thought helplessly, his face a mixture of frustration and resignation. Deciding to bring her back to reality, he sighed and said bluntly, "I may have gotten first place, but I've been assigned to the Logistics Division." The words were like a bucket of cold water. For a moment, Yao Lilin was silent, her expression shifting from disbelief to fiery anger. "What? Logistics division!" she exploded, her voice rising with indignation. Without waiting for an explanation, she stormed toward the faculty office, her footsteps echoing with purpose. Before Qiao An could stop her, she kicked the door open with dramatic flair, pointing an accusatory finger at the startled teachers. "This placement test is rigged," she shouted. "How could someone with top scores in every subject be shoved into logistics? It's unfair, and you know it." The teachers, stunned into silence, exchanged awkward glances, clearly unprepared for this sudden confrontation. Qiao An's heart sank. "Yao Lilin, stop it," he hissed, rushing into the office to drag her out. Grabbing her arm, he whispered urgently, "Making a scene isn't going to change anything. You'll just make things worse for both of us." Reluctantly, she allowed herself to be pulled away, though her fiery gaze lingered on the teachers. As they exited, the two faculty members sat frozen in their chairs, one finally muttering, "Kids these days sure have a lot of energy, huh?" Meanwhile, in the academy's discussion office, a group of teachers was gathered around a table, their expressions heavy with concern. "This year's placement test has been unusual," one teacher said, frowning. "Moving the compatibility tests up from graduation was a decision we weren't prepared for." Another teacher leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "It's tied to the military's push for recruitment. Ever since the expansion project failed, they've been desperate for manpower. Standards haven't dropped, but the demand is increasing." The conversation inevitably shifted to Xiao An. His test results were outstanding, a short-haired teacher said. "Maybe we should give him a chance to use a battle armor." A long-haired teacher shook his head skeptically. "Cases like that are 1 in a million. The results don't lie, he has no compatibility. What can we do?" "I ran his blood sample through unofficial channels for a second analysis," the long-haired teacher admitted. "Still no compatibility. Logistics division might be the safest place for him." As the debate continued, a commanding presence entered the room. Lin Wei, Deputy Director of Tianshu Technology's Battle Armor Development Department. Her reputation for directness preceded her. "I'm here to reassign some students from the Logistics Division," she announced, her tone brooking no argument. Deputy Director Yu hesitated. "An entire class? That seems excessive." Lin Wei cut him off with an icy smile. "It's just site cleanup. Nothing more. Besides, hasn't our collaboration been mutually beneficial?" Yu's face paled and she quickly relented. Lin Wei swept past her, her sharp heels clicking on the floor as she made her way to the logistics classroom. The hum of anticipation in the logistics classroom was abruptly interrupted as Lin Wei turned, her expression calm yet commanding, and fixed Deputy Director Yu with a knowing smile. "Come now, Director Yu," she said smoothly, her tone layered with a subtle pressure that made refusal impossible. "I trust you won't disappoint me, will you?" Yu swallowed hard, his discomfort evident in the beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "Of course not, Miss Lin," he replied hastily, his voice betraying his unease. Meanwhile, inside the classroom, the teacher's serious tone filled the air as he addressed the logistics students. "Now that you've been assigned to the logistics division," he began, "your focus has shifted entirely from the preparatory stage. Your new goal is to earn credits. What you learned during the preparatory phase was merely to ensure your survival within the city walls. Out there, in the wasteland, things are different." His gaze swept across the room, locking eyes with students to emphasize the gravity of his words. "In the logistics division, you'll primarily earn credits by completing tasks related to mutant creatures. Familiarize yourselves with their key characteristics, especially the location of their cores. Practical training opportunities will be provided to help you accumulate credits, so don't miss them." He gestured toward a nearby display case containing sleek protective suits. These suits are designed to save your life in critical moments. Your first suit is free, your only free suit. Remember, every resource in this post-apocalyptic world is valuable. Treat these opportunities with care." As the teacher continued, Yao Leilin was entirely uninterested in the lecture, her focus solely on Qiao An. She leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with amusement and mischief. "Xiaoan, we're classmates now," she announced, her voice light and cheerful. Xiaoan sighed, rubbing his temples. "How on earth did you end up in the logistics division?" With a triumphant grin, Yao Leilin replied, "Oh, I asked my family to pull a few strings." Her tone carried a casual pride, one that hinted at the immense influence of the Yao Corporation. Xiaoan couldn't hide his exasperation. "You had top grades, Leilin. You could have gone anywhere. Why logistics?" "To stay with you, of course," she said brightly, her determination unwavering. "You're not disappearing on me again." Xiaoan could only sigh in resignation, his head sinking into his hands. Before he could formulate a reply, the door burst open, and Lin Wei entered, followed closely by a visibly uneasy Deputy Director Yu. The teacher at the podium stepped aside, acknowledging her authority with a slight nod. Lin Wei strode to the front of the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Apologies for the interruption, Mr. Wong," she said politely, before addressing the students. "Prepare yourselves for an off-campus practical training session," she announced, her calm yet firm voice silencing the room. The students erupted into chatter. "Practical training already? Isn't this too soon? Can I just skip this?" Deputy Director Yu, her patience snapping, slammed his hand on the desk. "Quiet," she bellowed. "Is this the discipline of the logistics division?" The room fell silent and Lin Wei stepped in with a faint smile. "Allow me to explain," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "This mission involves collecting mutant creature cores outside the city. Normally, these cores would only earn flexible credits. However, this time they'll count as task credits with no deductions." She paused, letting her words sink in. "What's more," she continued, "credit rewards will be based on the core's quality. The higher the quality, the greater the multiplier, up to 10 times the credits." The room froze. Students and teachers alike were stunned, and murmurs of excitement began to ripple through the class. Lin Wei's next words delivered an even greater shock. "For this mission, there's an additional reward. The 2 students who turn in cores, the fastest and in the highest quantities, will receive half a month's usage rights to the latest model of mass-produced exoskeletons. No restrictions on how they use them, as long as they're returned intact." The announcement sent the classroom into a frenzy. Even the teachers looked taken aback by the offer. Deputy Director Yu leaned toward Lin Wei, her voice low and filled with concern. "Lin Wei, isn't this a bit risky? Deploying exoskeletons privately?" Lin Wei waved off his concerns with a calm smile. "Relax, Director Yu. These exoskeletons aren't from the Academy." Still uneasy, Yu hesitated but ultimately relented. She raised her voice, addressing the class. "You've all heard Miss Lin. If you're willing to participate, register with your teacher now." Qiao An mulled over the announcement. Half a month of exoskeleton usage, he thought. Not a lot of time, but if I use it wisely, it could ease my debt situation. But what if the mission is too dangerous? His thoughts were interrupted by an uneasy realization. Yao Leilin was no longer at her desk. His heart sank. Where did she go this time? The morning air was crisp as the students assembled at the Academy's training grounds. Their excitement mingled with a palpable sense of unease. At the forefront, the teacher stood tall, his expression stern as he addressed the group. His voice rang out authoritative and clear, cutting through the murmurs of nervous chatter. "Before we begin, listen carefully to my instructions," he said. "When collecting cores, assess the safety of your surroundings at all times. Under no circumstances are you to leave the designated training area. If you do, the Academy will not take responsibility for what happens beyond the boundaries." A hush fell over the group as the gravity of his words sank in. The teacher continued, his tone even more serious. "Always carry your locator device and ensure it remains powered on. If you encounter any danger, press the activation button immediately. Once activated, head back toward the camp without delay. Our staff will come to your aid, but only if you stay within the permitted area. Do not take unnecessary risks. Is that clear?" The students nodded, the weight of the mission settling on their shoulders. Xiaoan glanced to his side, where Yao Lilin was deftly securing her locator to her armor. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, but the mischievous sparkle in her eyes gave her away. "You don't need money or credits," Qiao An muttered, exasperation evident in his voice. "Why are you so eager to join this?" Yao Lilin turned to him with a grin so bright it almost made him forget the absurdity of her presence. "I've been stuck under my family's watchful eye my whole life," she replied cheerfully. "Never allowed to leave the city walls. This time I finally found a loophole. Of course I'm sneaking out to see the world." She laughed lightly, as if this were an ordinary outing and not a dangerous mission. "Don't worry, I've got my armor, my locator, and a good head on my shoulders. If danger strikes, I'll definitely run faster than you." She gave him a wink. "You just focus on your own business. I won't slow you down." Her carefree tone left Xiaoan torn between frustration and a reluctant sense of relief. At least she was prepared, or so she thought. A short distance away, Lin Wei stood alongside a man who was observing the students with a skeptical frown. "Miss Lin," the man began, his voice tinged with confusion, "I don't understand why you brought these students here. Wouldn't hiring skilled workers be faster and more efficient? And offering 2 exoskeletons as rewards? Out of your own pocket, no less." Lin Wei's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. Her eyes never left the students as she replied, "Skilled workers talk too much. Confidentiality is our top priority for this test. As for these logistics students, most of them are either rich heirs or indifferent to credits. The ones willing to join practical training are few and far between. And even if something goes wrong, the Academy's compensation mechanisms for training-related losses are already in place." She tilted her head slightly, her tone sharp but amused. "Remember, the Battle Armor Academy isn't here to raise pampered flowers using corporate funds." The man furrowed his brow but said nothing, listening intently as Lin Wei continued. "Rewards, you say? Skilled workers demand hefty pay and come with endless complications. Students, on the other hand, collect cores and turn them in. That benefits us in every way and offsets the resource losses from testing. To us, credits are meaningless numbers. Nothing to worry about," while she smirked faintly, adding, "As for the exoskeletons, lightly used gear in nearly new condition will suffice." Her expression grew thoughtful as she shifted topics. "Speaking of which, what about the test armor? Has it not returned yet?" The man quickly checked his terminal, his brow furrowing further. "The test armor reported mission completion 30 minutes ago," he said, his voice tinged with puzzlement. "It should have arrived by now." The scene shifted to the desolate ruins of Tianji City, where crumbling skyscrapers stood as silent witnesses to a once thriving civilization. Deep in the heart of the wasteland, a monstrous figure moved, a towering zombie-like humanoid with sinewy muscles and patches of decayed flesh, reminiscent of a grotesque nightmare. Its massive size made it seem invincible, a beast titan reborn in the apocalypse. Suddenly, an energy bolt streaked through the air, striking the monster's broad back. The attack fizzled against its decaying hide, leaving only a faint scorch mark. The beast froze, then turned its grotesque head. Its soulless eyes glared toward its attacker, now revealed. A white-armored soldier scrambling for cover behind a shattered wall. "EST report number 21, the soldier shouted into his communicator, his voice trembling with urgency. "The new rifle's energy gathering mode suffers from severe energy dispersion. It's incapable of lethal damage against high-risk targets above level 4. The communicator replied with a sharp beep and a cold, automated message. "Upload failed." "Damn it," the soldier cursed, slamming his fist against the wall. Frustration and fear battled for dominance in his voice. "Still can't contact base camp." He crouched lower behind his crumbling shield, his breath ragged as he tried to calm his racing mind. The air smelled of decay and ozone, and every shadow seemed to pulse with lurking danger. His thoughts raced. Good thing this energy-gathering mode still packs a punch, even with the energy dispersion. But it's a damn energy hog. It's been too long. Hasn't the base camp noticed something's wrong yet? Glancing down at his weapon, he grimaced. The rifle hummed faintly, a menacing glow emanating from its core. "I've only got enough energy left for one shot." His gaze shifted to the open field where his spear lay glinting in the faint light. "I've got to find a way to get my spear back." Just as he began to strategize, a low growl snapped him to attention. His blood ran cold as he turned to see a mutated zombie cat crouched a few feet away. Its skin hung in tatters, exposing sinewy muscle and bone, and its glowing eyes radiated malevolent hunger. "Nice kitty," the soldier whispered, his voice shaky but attempting calm. He slowly raised his hands, his pulse pounding in his ears. "Don't come any closer." The creature tensed, muscles coiling like springs, then pounced with a feral scream. The soldier dove to the side just in time, narrowly avoiding the claws that raked the air where he'd been standing. The zombie cat crashed into the ground with a snarl, its claws digging into the cracked pavement. Heart hammering, the soldier rolled onto his back, raising his rifle in desperation. His finger tightened on the trigger. The weapon whined, then erupted in a blinding surge of energy. The blast struck the cat mid-leap, tearing it apart with an ear-shattering explosion. Its mutilated body collapsed in two, the stench of burnt flesh filling the air. The soldier was blown backward by the recoil, landing hard on his back. Stars danced in his vision, but relief was short-lived. His head snapped toward the hulking figure of the humanoid monster, now stalking toward him. It had seen him. "Dang it," the soldier exclaimed, scrambling to his feet. The scene shifted to another section of the ruins, where Qiao An stood triumphantly atop a mountain of scrap. A mix of amusement and satisfaction danced in his eyes as he examined a heavy-duty engineering exoskeleton buried among the debris. "Blessings of nature," he exclaimed, brushing dust off the metallic frame. "Finding a treasure like this in a dump? Tisk, a heavy-duty engineering exoskeleton. Too bad it's out of juice. If I could haul this back, I'd fetch a fortune." His moment of excitement was interrupted as the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. His grin faded, replaced by confusion. "An earthquake? How?" he murmured, scanning the area. Before he could process, a zombified rat lunged at him from the shadows, its decayed form grotesque but unnervingly agile. Xiao An's instincts kicked in as he darted away, narrowly avoiding its snapping jaws. The rat hissed viciously, relentless in its pursuit. With a sharp motion, Qiao An pulled out his dagger and turned to face the creature. He slashed in a precise arc, and the blade found its mark. The zombified rat collapsed in a heap, its body convulsing before going still. "Rodents turning into zombies," Qiao An muttered, breathing heavily. His gaze lingered on the twisted remains, unease creeping into his voice. "Damn, they're vicious. They managed to survive the apocalypse, and their adaptability is even stronger than the old world records suggested." Looking around the desolate ruins, his brows furrowed. This mission was supposed to be simple, just collecting cores from corpses. The tremors grew stronger. He steadied himself, thoughts racing. Now, on top of these unexplained earthquakes, we've got live mutated creatures showing up. He tightened his grip on the dagger. Better head back to camp and figure out what's going on before I decide my next move. Elsewhere, the white-armored soldier had retrieved his spear and was sprinting desperately through the ruins. Behind him, the monstrous zombie humanoid gave chase. Ahead of the soldier, a zombie was wandering aimlessly, as though it were just another lazy Sunday. With no time for hesitation, the soldier lunged forward, his spear slicing through the air at tremendous speed. "Get out of my way!" he shouted, impaling the zombie and sending its lifeless body crumpling to the ground. The monstrous figure behind him was undeterred. Its guttural roar echoed, and with terrifying force it hurled the concrete slab. The soldier glanced back mid-sprint, his eyes widening. "Damn it," he cursed, diving to avoid the flying debris. At the base camp, Lin Wei and her colleague were staring at an array of monitors, all flashing red in alarm. Tension hung thick in the air as the man's face paled, sweat beading on his forehead. "High-energy Joe Metal virus mutated creature detected," he exclaimed. "Threat level 4? We don't have combat armor advanced enough to deal with this." Lin Wei's usually calm demeanor faltered, panic flickering in her eyes. "What about the test combat armor? Any contact yet?" The man checked a monitor and shook his head grimly. "No contact. We only have vital sign readings, but..." He hesitated before continuing. "The mutated creature's signal is coming from the test combat RO armor's planned return route. They've likely engaged." He turned to Lin Wei, his expression serious. "Director Lin, the weak Covenant factor level test for the combat armor wasn't exactly by the book this time. If the armor itself is destroyed before the data is saved..." Lin Wei didn't let him finish. Her voice snapped with authority as she turned to the soldiers. "Send teams to assist. All students are to evacuate back to camp. Hurry." Meanwhile, the crashing slab from the monstrous zombie had struck a building, causing an avalanche of rubble to rain down. Qiao An and several other students were nearby, their expressions shifting from curiosity to sheer horror as the structure groaned and began to collapse. "Run!" a soldier shouted, sprinting toward them with panic etched on his face. "Run! Run! Run!" But some students weren't so lucky. Massive chunks of concrete slammed into the ground, cutting off escape routes. Screams rang out only to be silenced as rubble buried the unlucky. Some students reacted in time, bolting away from the crumbling ruins. Amid the chaos, a girl stood frozen in terror, her wide eyes locked on the falling debris above her. Time seemed to slow as she froze, unable to move. Suddenly, a blur of motion streaked past her. It was Qiao An, his expression fierce with determination. "Hang on!" he shouted, diving toward her. With a surge of speed, he tackled her out of harm's way, just as a massive slab crashed down where she had been standing. They hit the ground hard, rolling to safety as dust and debris filled the air. Chaos enveloped the desolate ruins as a soldier rushed toward the shaken group of students. His voice was firm, but his concern was evident. "Students, are you okay? Any injuries?" Xiao An, breathless but steady, shook his head. "We're fine," he replied, before a spark of urgency lit his eyes. "Have you seen Yao Lilin?" The soldier's gaze swept over the group, assessing them quickly. "Leave this student with me," he said, gesturing to the girl Qiao An had just saved. "Everyone else has returned to camp. You're the only group still out here. Go quickly, it's dangerous here." Xiao An nodded but hesitated, his brow furrowing in worry. Just then, the ground rumbled violently beneath them. Dust and debris rose into the air as a white-armored soldier came crashing down nearby, his body slamming against the earth with brutal force. Smoke hissed from his helmet, his motionless form suggesting the worst. The students erupted into panic, their screams echoing in the broken landscape. One boy, lagging behind, froze in place. Sweat poured down his face as he turned, his eyes wide with terror. His trembling voice broke through the chaos. "Z-zombies," he screamed, pointing at a group of grotesque figures sprinting toward them. The undead horde surged forward with horrifying speed. Students scattered in all directions, fear driving them to flee. The soldiers sprang into action, their weapons blazing as they formed a defensive line. "First squad, stay with me and cover the rear." "Protect the students, retreat," a soldier barked, his voice sharp with command. "Yes, Captain," another soldier responded, immediately falling into formation. Amid the gunfire and chaos, one girl froze in terror as a zombie lunged at her. Its decayed hands reached out, its teeth bared for a bite. She raised her arm instinctively, trying to block it, but her body shook in fear. In a blur, Qiao An leapt forward, his dagger flashing in the dim light. He slashed the zombie cleanly, sending its lifeless body crashing to the ground. Before he could catch his breath, a snarling zombie dog burst from the shadows, its decayed form a blur of motion as it lunged for him. Qiao An dodged just in time, twisting with practiced precision. He thrust his dagger into the creature's throat, then slammed it into the ground with tremendous force. Panting, he sat on the ground, his chest heaving as he muttered, "Damn it, can't get my blade out at a time like this." Are these humanoid mutants' muscles really that dense? Wouldn't have this problem with combat armor. A sharp hiss escaped his lips as he glanced down at his leg. Blood seeped through his pants and pain pulsed through the injury. He sighed, frustration mingling with exhaustion. This level of injury, this is bad. Without someone to help, my movement speed is severely limited. A noise behind him drew his attention. He turned to see his fellow students and soldiers locked in a fierce battle with the encroaching horde. Then his breath caught as he noticed something monstrous lurking behind a crumbling building. Peering from the shadows was the enormous humanoid zombie, its hulking form barely concealed by the debris. Its grotesque features were illuminated by the dim light. "What the hell?" Qiao An whispered, his voice trembling. "What is that size?" But before he could react, a strange green light began to emanate from the dead zombies around him. He froze, his confusion mounting as the glow pulsed and swirled. This light? Since when? He thought, his heart racing. The green energy flowed toward him, enveloping his body in a soft but otherworldly glow. He stared in shock as the light seeped into his injured leg. "The wound," he murmured, disbelief washing over him. "It's gone." The light intensified, drawing energy from the fallen zombies nearby. It coursed through him, filling him with warmth and an unfamiliar sensation, something almost euphoric. He closed his eyes, overwhelmed. This light, it actually feels good, like I'm getting my energy back. Qiao An's eyes fluttered open and his breath caught. He was no longer in the ruins, but floating in a strange, ethereal space. The void stretched endlessly around him, filled with swirling colors and faint, distant echoes. Below him, two combat armors, one black and red, the other white and purple, clashed in a fierce battle. Their every movement sent ripples through the dreamlike space. He gasped, his voice trembling. "The combat armors! From my dream! How are they here? Is this my mindscape?" As he struggled to make sense of the surreal sight, the black and red armor suddenly stopped mid-fight. Its glowing, malevolent gaze turned directly toward him. A chill ran down his spine as the armor began moving toward him, its intent unmistakably hostile. His heart raced, fear gripping him as the white and purple armor joined in, both now speeding toward him with an almost predatory focus. "No, no, no!" he stammered, panic rising. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. In an instant, the two armors turned into streams of pure light energy, surging toward him. He flinched, throwing his arms up defensively, but it was futile. The energy pierced into his body, merging with him. A powerful, disorienting surge of power coursed through him, overwhelming his senses. Confusion and fear mixed with the searing intensity of the energy, leaving him gasping for air. Suddenly, a surge of blue energy erupted from within him, crackling like a thunderstorm. A golden chain shot out, wrapping around the black and red armor and violently pulling it from his body. Qiao An's eyes began to glow with an otherworldly blue light, his entire body radiating an overwhelming energy. The power enveloped him, fierce and untamed, like a raging tempest. From a distance, the girl from earlier stared at the radiant figure with wide, disbelieving eyes. "That direction. Is that Qiao An?" she whispered, her voice filled with shock. Even the monstrous zombie halted, its grotesque form frozen as it turned its gaze toward Qiao An's surging energy. But its hesitation was brief. The monster's maw began to glow, gathering energy for a devastating blast. With a deafening roar, it unleashed a massive energy beam, the sheer force of it tearing through the landscape. The girl closed her eyes tightly, her voice trembling with fear. "No! Qiao An!" The energy blast slammed into Qiao An, but instead of obliterating him, it was met with a resounding clash. When the smoke cleared, he stood tall, now clad in the majestic white tiger armor. The intricate gleaming plates reflected the green haze of destruction around him, and the glowing blue energy coursed through the armor like veins of lightning. The girl's jaw dropped, her voice barely a whisper. I'm alive." Inside the armor, Qiao An's voice emerged, calm and commanding. "Can you still walk?" Her heart skipped a beat at the familiarity of the voice. "This voice, Qiao An?" she asked, stunned. As her eyes took in the magnificent armor, a thought struck her. Is there someone else in the logistics division who can use a battle suit? She stumbled over her words, finally managing to reply. I'm okay. Thank you." The monstrous zombie began to lumber forward, its massive frame shaking the ground. Qiao An's voice grew urgent. "Quickly, find cover. It's dangerous here." The girl hesitated but then nodded, running towards safety. As she fled, Qiao An stared down at his armored hands, his mind racing. "How do I use this thing?" The armor responded almost instinctively, guiding his thoughts. Then his gaze snapped to the monster as it shifted its focus. His stomach dropped. "Wait, it's targeting other people?" In the distance, the monstrous zombie turned its attention toward the fleeing students. It roared, its grotesque jaws gathering another ball of destructive energy. The terrified students screamed, scattering in panic. "Run! It's coming this way!" one of them cried, the sound of desperation echoing through the ruins. Qiao An clenched his fists, his heart pounding as he calculated the situation. The monster's glowing energy grew brighter, seconds away from unleashing devastation. "At this distance?" he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "I won't be able to get close enough in time." As Qiao An raced toward the towering monstrosity, his mind buzzed with frantic calculations. "A weapon! I need a weapon! Where can I get a weapon?" In a flash of recognition, he called out, "Hey, you, the one with the spear!" A figure crouched behind cover. It was the white-armored soldier from earlier. The soldier, battered and breathing heavily, was speaking urgently into his communicator. "Miss Lin, the situation is worse than anticipated. The zombies' beam attacks are relentless. My defenses are compromised. I can't hold out much longer." His voice wavered with the weight of desperation as he peeked at the monstrous creature looming in the distance. "The effects of my other potions aren't strong enough. I request permission to use the new Type 2 Berserk potion." Lin Wei's response was sharp and unyielding. "Negative. Your body won't be able to handle the potion's side effects. Request denied. While the Berserk potion can boost your power temporarily, it's experimental. The risks are too great." The soldier tightened his grip on his spear, his knuckles whitening. "Miss Lin, I have to do this. It's our only chance." Before he could finish, a streak of glowing white and blue energy zipped past him, a blur of motion that yanked the spear from his grasp. "Let me borrow that." Xiaoan's voice rang out as he dashed ahead, the spear now firmly in his hand. The white-armored soldier stared at his empty hand, blinking in sheer disbelief. His mind struggled to process what had just happened. "Wait, what?" he muttered, utterly baffled. Ahead, the massive zombie began gathering energy in its maw again, a deadly orb of light growing larger with each passing second. The students scattered in terror, their screams piercing the chaos. "It's firing another beam," one student shouted in panic. "Everyone scatter!" Just as the monster prepared to unleash its devastating attack, a spear suddenly hurtled through the air, a streak of power slicing toward the beast's glowing left eye. The spear struck true, embedding itself deep into the socket. The monster roared in agony, its energy blast misfiring wildly into a nearby building. The shockwave of the explosion sent rubble flying, but the students were spared the worst of it. The group froze in stunned silence, their wide eyes darting between the injured monster and their unlikely savior. In front of the monstrous creature, now standing tall and radiant in his white tiger armor, was Qiao An. He exhaled, relief washing over him. That was close, just made it in time. The monstrous zombie, reeling from its injury, roared with fury. Its remaining eye locked onto Qiao An, and its rage was palpable. Energy began to crackle in its maw once again, brighter and more furious than before. Qiao An braced himself. "Oh, it's coming at me?" His voice carried a mix of disbelief and dry humor. "It looks pissed." With a guttural roar, the monster unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one hurtling toward Qiao An with terrifying speed. But he moved like lightning, dodging each attack with supernatural agility. Leaping, spinning, and darting through the chaos, he evaded every blast, leaving the beast increasingly frustrated. The monster growled in confusion, its gaze darting around as it tried to locate its elusive target. Then, from beneath it, Qiao An surged forward with incredible speed. His focus sharpened and energy began to condense into his right fist, glowing fiercely. He lunged at the monster's leg and delivered a devastating punch, the sheer force of it shaking the ground and sending the colossal creature crashing down. Inside the armor, Qiao An frowned. Too light, not enough. Before he could recover, the monster retaliated, its massive palm slamming into him with crushing force. Qiao An was sent hurtling through the air, colliding violently with a nearby building. The impact left a crater in the wall as dust and debris rained down around him. Groaning, Qiao An pulled himself from the rubble, his body aching from the blow. He clenched his fists, frustration mounting. "I need more power," he growled. Amid the cacophony of the battlefield, a calm yet firm voice echoed in Qiao An's mind. "Kid, you're not using the White Tiger battle suit properly. Listen up, the target's external defenses are too high." Qiao An froze in confusion, his eyes darting around. Who's talking?" he thought desperately. Suddenly, a vision engulfed his senses. In this dreamlike scene, he saw a majestic white tiger battling a colossal foe. The voice returned, steady and authoritative. "Like this, focus all your energy into a single point and release it the instant you make contact." The vision burned into his mind like an instruction manual etched into his soul. The clarity was startling. Back in the chaos of the fight, the hulking zombie monster roared with fury, clenching its enormous fist and launching a devastating punch aimed at Qiao An. The sheer force of it shook the ground, cracks radiating from the impact point. But Qiao An, his focus sharpened like never before, sidestepped with inhuman agility, narrowly avoiding the strike. He clenched his right fist, energy surging through his arm, swirling and condensing into a blinding point of light. The memory of the vision guided him. Focus. Release. All at once. With a battle cry that cut through the air, he darted beneath the monster and launched himself upward. His energy-charged fist collided with the creature's massive back in a single, devastating blow. A shockwave rippled outward, shaking the battlefield. The power of the punch tore through the creature's chest, creating a massive gaping hole that obliterated its core. The monster let out an agonized scream, its roar fading into a hollow, haunting silence. The students, who had been frozen in terror moments earlier, stood dumbfounded. One whispered in disbelief, "We're saved?" The colossal body of the zombie monster toppled forward, crashing to the ground with an earth-shaking thud. Dust and debris rose into the air as the lifeless creature lay face down, a massive hole visible through its torso. As the dust settled, Qiao An powered down, the white tiger battle suit retracting into the sleek morpher now resting on his wrist. The battlefield fell silent, save for the whispers of awe from those around him. "He took it down in one hit," someone exclaimed, their voice trembling with a mix of relief and disbelief. Qiao An looked down at the morpher on his hand, his expression a mixture of wonder and realization. "So this is it," he thought. It was the white tiger battle suit's contract bracelet. Does that mean... He clenched his fist, staring at the device as if it held the answers to every question burning in his mind. "I can use the white tiger battle suit whenever I want now." The narrator's voice carries a weight of history and hope. After the end of the world, humanity stood on the brink of extinction. Their cities turned to rubble and their lands swallowed by chaos. But amidst the desolation, they found a spark of salvation, ancient ruins buried deep in the wasteland. From those forgotten places, they unearthed a marvel of a bygone age, the contract battle armor technology. Driven by desperation and ingenuity, humanity set to work. They reverse-engineered the ancient armor, unlocking secrets lost to time. Within years, the first generation of battle armors was born, a testament to the resilience of mankind. Mass production began, and with it, the tide turned. Equipped with both the powerful, enigmatic contract battle armors and the more widely available mass-produced versions, humanity launched its counter-offensive. Bit by bit, they reclaimed their lost homelands, driving back the monsters that had once seemed unstoppable. The people who wield these contract battle armors became legends, known as contractors. Their strength and courage were unmatched, their armors bonded to their very souls. Though mass-produced battle armors were nowhere near the might of the ancient ones, humanity refused to stand still. For 3 centuries, these suits have been refined and upgraded, each iteration stronger, faster, and more adaptable than the last. The quiet hum of Lin Wei's command center. In the depths of the base, Lin Wei stood before a massive screen, the glow of Qiao An's fight reflecting in her sharp, calculating eyes. Each strike, each movement of the white tiger armor against the towering mutated creature was etched with power, precision, and an enigmatic brilliance that stirred her thoughts. Lin Wei's gaze narrowed, her mind spinning with the weight of knowledge and unanswered questions. Technology like this, reshaping armor through portable devices, she mused, her lips pressed into a thin line. It's virtually unheard of outside of Yuheng City. In Tianshu City, not a single company has managed to replicate it. The screen flared as Qiao An's devastating punch obliterated the monster's defenses, a single strike that would have required a squad of 10 mass-produced armors to achieve. Lin Wei's thoughts deepened, her brows furrowing as if trying to untangle a web of secrets. Its performance? Flawless. A force of destruction and elegance in one. Only a handful of groups in Yuheng City could have crafted something of this caliber. The Central Industrial Bureau? Zhenghua Heavy Industry? Or could it be the Weapons Technology Group? The shrill ring of her phone snapped her from her thoughts. She answered swiftly, her tone sharp and commanding. "Hello, it's me," she began, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. "Yes, just say that the white battle armor is a prototype we're developing, since it's a commercial secret. Ensure all witnesses keep the appearance of the armor confidential. And what of the investigation into this white battle armor? Nothing? No records at all? Could it be related to the rumors about the Qiao family's contract battle armor in Yuheng City? Fine, keep digging, spare no expense." Her tone turned cold as she ended the call with a decisive press, her eyes lingering on the screen where Qiao An, clad in the white tiger armor, continued to battle. Her thoughts churned, pulling her deeper into speculation. The Qiao family. They vanished from Yuheng City years ago, every trace of them wiped clean. The rumors say it had something to do with the contract battle armor, but this suit... Her gaze softened, curiosity flickering behind her sharp exterior. There's no information, no data, nothing about that battle armor in any database. Her thoughts lingered on the enigmatic figure moving with effortless grace on the screen. The armor, glowing with a brilliance that seemed otherworldly, filled her with an unsettling mix of awe and suspicion. She clenched her fist, her voice a whisper only she could hear. "Who exactly are you?" The camera pans into a small but cozy living room where Qiao An and his older sister sit across from each other at a modest table. The air is thick with unspoken words as both siblings avoid each other's gaze, their expressions a mix of tension and uncertainty. The only sound is the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Finally, Qiao An breaks the silence, his voice steady but tinged with hesitation. "Sister, you know everything." His sister exhales deeply, leaning back slightly in her chair. Her eyes, sharp yet filled with concern, lock onto Qiao An's. She replies with a sigh, her tone a mix of exasperation and pride. "Although your academy tried to cover it up, such things can't be hidden from the military." Qiao An lowers his gaze, guilt and discomfort flickering across his face. His sister continues, her voice growing softer but carrying the weight of her words. "If it weren't for you wearing that unknown white battle armor and eliminating the large zombie during the training exercise, there would have been serious casualties. A lot of people owe you big time for this." For a moment, silence falls again, but this time Qiao An breaks it with a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "If there are kind-hearted people willing to help us solve our debt problem, that'd be amazing." His sister cracks a small smile, her seriousness giving way to a brief moment of amusement. But as Qiao An's laughter fades, his tone shifts, turning quiet and sincere. "Sister?" Her eyebrows raise in curiosity. Qiao An hesitates, scratching the back of his head, then finally looks her in the eye. "The academy sent a big payout, enough to cover this month's debt. We don't have to worry about getting kicked out for now. We can finally relax a bit." His sister's smile grows, a teasing glint appearing in her eyes. "That's right. It's time to relax a bit. You've done so much. Let's celebrate properly. Let's go out to eat today, and it's on you." Qiao An's jaw drops, his eyes wide in exaggerated shock. "Wait, why should I treat you when you're celebrating my success?" His sister crosses her arms, her voice calm, but with an undertone of love and firmness. "You are not alone. Even if everyone else is gone, you still have me." Qiao An's mock protest fades into a gentle smile. He nods, his voice quiet but filled with gratitude. "I know, sis." With a warm smile, she hands him an envelope. "Follow your own path. I will always be there for you." Confused, Qiao An carefully opens the envelope. His eyes widen in disbelief as he pulls out a document, his transfer order. It's a reassignment from the logistics class to the contractors class. The sun had barely risen as Qiao An made his way to the contractor preparatory class 2 classroom. The crisp morning air carried a mix of anticipation and nerves, his heart racing with excitement. A familiar face caught his eye, Yu Sheng. The moment Yu Sheng saw him, his expression twisted into one of sheer disbelief. He remembered clearly that Qiao An had been assigned to the logistics class, so why was he here, standing in the elite classroom? Qiao An, what are you doing here? Yu Sheng's voice was low, a mix of surprise and confusion. Qiao An smiled, pulling a letter from his bag. He handed it to Yu Sheng and explained vaguely, "It's from the headmaster's office. Some unforeseen circumstances led to my transfer." Yu Sheng scanned the letter, his brow furrowed with questions he didn't voice. Deep down, Qiao An knew the transfer involved complexities he wasn't ready to share. Meanwhile, the other students in the room began to take notice. Whispers rippled through the class, their gazes lingering on him. Yesterday, he had been just another face among the crowd, but today, everything had changed. Across campus, in the academy's grand conference room, the headmaster presided over an emergency meeting. The recent attack had placed the academy under intense public scrutiny. Despite the gag order issued to students and staff, whispers of the event had already begun to circulate beyond the school's walls. The headmaster's voice was heavy with concern. "We need to shift focus. The academy competition will be moved up. It's the best way to divert attention and restore confidence in our institution." The faculty exchanged glances, but ultimately nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, far from the academy, in the military command office of the fortress capital, Yuheng Military Academy, a shadowy figure talking on his mobile, a slow, deliberate smile spread across their face as they watched Qiao An's movements. "Treat him like any other student," the figure instructed coldly, their voice barely above a whisper. "No special treatment. Let him grow naturally." As the figure tapped a tablet, replaying footage of the White Tiger Armor's battle, his eyes glinted with a mix of curiosity and ambition. This boy, Qiao An, was no ordinary student. This unassuming young man would soon stun everyone, his potential far greater than anyone could imagine. The contractor preparatory class, too, was bustling with students, each one exuding an air of confidence, except for Qiao An, who sat stiffly at his desk, trying to go unnoticed. But of course, fate wasn't going to let him off that easy. "Hello, everyone," a lively voice interrupted the chatter. Yao Leilin stood at the front of the class, her signature energy lighting up the room. "I'm Yao Leilin, previously from the logistics class. Starting today, I'll be in the contractor preparatory class. Please give me your advice." Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Qiao An. She broke into a wide smile and waved enthusiastically. "Senior Qiao An," she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. Qiao An froze. His face betrayed nothing but a polite, tight-lipped smile. However, internally, he groaned. "Of course, she's still following me." A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. The class bell rang, signaling the end of the session, and the students began filing out. Just as Yao Leilin was about to leave, Yu Sheng called out from behind her. "Hey, Yao Leilin, I've got something to ask you." She turned, curious. "If you're wondering how I switched classes, well, it's simple. My family has money and power. I can do anything." Her tone was nonchalant, even smug, but Yu Sheng's expression remained serious. "No, I'm asking about what happened during that mission, the zombie monster attack. What really happened?" The smugness drained from Yao Leilin's face. She stood still, the memory clearly unsettling. Yu Sheng pressed on. "You're the eldest lady of the Yao family, and while that gives you influence, it doesn't explain how you or Qiao An ended up here. No ordinary student suddenly finds themselves wielding talent in battle armor without reason. Something happened during that mission. I asked another student from your group, and they said it's a secret. What's the real story?" Yao Leilin sighed, folding her arms. "You already know it's a secret. Why ask me?" As Yu Sheng continued to stare at her, Yao Lilin's thoughts turned inward. That white battle armor, the Tianji technology prototype? Impossible. Our Yao family has no access to something like that. And Senior Qiao An, when did he gain the ability to use such powerful armor? That back view during the fight? It was so strong, so commanding, but also so lonely. The abandoned city loomed ahead, its crumbling skyline a stark reminder of humanity's fall. A blonde-haired instructor stood tall among the group of students, his confident grin as sharp as his words. "This class is a practical training exercise," he began, his voice carrying over the eerie silence. "You'll spread out and hunt alone in the city. Your objective is to take down the mourners and recycle their cores." His tone shifted to something almost cheerful, his smile broadening. "The number of recycled cores will determine your points in class, and the champion with the highest points, they'll earn the right to use the best armor the Academy has to offer. Enjoy the perks, the prestige. Think of it as your official welcome ceremony. Show us who's truly worthy of being in this class." The students erupted in enthusiasm, shouting in unison, "Yes, sir!" Yu Sheng stood confidently among the group, his grin exuding determination. Across from him, Yao Lilin turned her gaze to Qiao An. Her brow furrowed slightly. There he was, standing apart, yawning lazily, as if this was just another mundane errand on a sleepy Sunday. Yu Sheng shook his head, his thoughts racing. That guy, Qiao An. His eyes flicked toward Yao Lilin. And her too. I've known Lilin for a while now, but I still don't understand her. She's no pushover, and the Yao group doesn't back down from competition, not even with giants like Skyframe technology. So how does someone like her comply with Tianji Technology's gag order so easily? As he mulled over these thoughts, Yu Sheng slipped into the city, weaving through the desolate streets. The mourners, grotesque, zombie-like creatures, began to appear, their hollow eyes fixed on him. With fluid precision, Yu Sheng sprang into action, his blade slicing through their decayed forms as though he were chopping vegetables in a kitchen. His strikes were clean, efficient, and relentless. Lilin doesn't understand Xiaoan either, he thought, pausing to collect another core. But I know one thing. He's hiding something big. That guy has a secret. A wave of mourners surged toward him, and Yu Sheng's expression hardened. Whatever it is, I don't care right now. For my grandpa's sake, I need to win this. I'll take down the largest number of mourners here and claim that champion spot. Whatever Qiao An is hiding, it's not my priority. Not today. Suddenly, a mourner lunged at Yu Sheng from his blind spot. His eyes widened in shock, too late to counter. But before the creature could land its blow, its head exploded in a spray of decayed flesh. Yu Sheng turned, startled. What the? There stood Yao Lilin, a confident smirk on her face. Oh, come on. Even if it's just a weakling, you shouldn't let your guard down, she teased. Yu Sheng's brow furrowed as he stared at her, noticing the faint glow of energy surrounding her battle armor. She fired her energy like a precise arrow. That armor. You're the one who shouldn't rely too much on your battle armor, he snapped, masking his irritation. Yao Lilin's smirk only widened. Oh, are you impressed? Impressed? Yu Sheng growled, his face flushing with irritation. Her armor is amazing, but who's admiring it? He gritted his teeth and pointed his blade toward the next wave of mourners. Let's see who racks up the most kills. I'm taking that champion spot. Yao Lilin chuckled, flipping her hair back as her armor's energy glimmered. All right, bring it on. The scene shifted to the final hours of the practical training. Yu Sheng and Yao Lilin stood frozen, their eyes wide in disbelief. In the distance, Qiao An stood tall amidst the carnage, his figure silhouetted against the crimson glow of the setting sun. He looked like a lone samurai who had just walked away from a battlefield, his blade metaphorically dripping with victory. Behind him lay a grim sea of destruction. 100 lifeless zombie corpses, their grotesque forms sprawled across the abandoned city. Yu Sheng's mouth hung open, his voice finally catching up with his thoughts. What the? This guy? How? Meanwhile, our boy Qiao An, calm as ever, scratched his chin and thought to himself. The instructor did say I could keep the cores for myself. These mutant cores can be used to craft equipment or exchanged for money. Even though mourners are low-level mutants, they still fetch a decent price. His inner musings were interrupted by Yao Leilin's enthusiastic shout. "Senior!" she called, her eyes sparkling with admiration as though she just spotted her hero. "You're so awesome! Really, truly awesome!" Qiao An, despite his best efforts to appear humble, started to flush with pride. A goofy grin spread across his face as he laughed nervously. "Ha ha ha. Well, it's nothing really. Just got lucky and stumbled upon a big cluster of them, that's all." But even as he spoke, his expression shifted, becoming more serious. His thoughts turned inward once more. By working alone, I had the perfect opportunity to test the White Tiger battle armor. The transformation isn't smooth yet, but I don't need to fully transform to unleash its power. Yao Leilin's admiration only grew, her gaze fixed on him like a beacon of awe. "Senior," she exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement. "With strength like yours, there's no doubt you'll win the championship in the college competition." Yu Sheng, still rooted in place, clenched his fists, his frustration bubbling beneath the surface. His mind raced. This many kills by just one person? How is that even possible? Qiao An, on the other hand, was having an entirely different inner dialogue. The Academy Competition Championship comes with a massive bonus. If I win that prize, I'll finally get a break from this endless debt. There's no way I'm letting anyone take it from me. Outwardly, though, he maintained his usual composed demeanor. With a serious face, he replied, "You shouldn't say things like that so easily. The college competition is full of incredibly strong competitors. The champions are like clouds far beyond our reach. And that's it for today. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next adventure.